Hey everybody, it's your buddy Beard Grizzly, and today I wanted to look back on, well, this week at Bungie, because I kinda haven't done that in a little while, but additionally, there's a couple things to talk about. I know it feels like all I'm doing lately is just talking about the game and kind of reporting on it, but bear with me because I do actually have another video in mind that I'm probably going to voice directly after this one. But this one, at least, is something that I'm able to create and get out to you guys quickly, now that my voice is actually sounding at least mildly better. If you guys haven't checked, I try to keep up with you guys at least over on the community post now and again, just to give you an update on what's happening on my end, to let you know what's up with the channel, plans that are coming up later, so on. But one of my more recent ones at least explain what's been going on and why content hasn't exactly been the best scheduled anymore. I remember a time when I could actually produce like 2 to 3 videos a week, and then this happened. My allergies have been killing me. Anyway, before I keep harping on this, I just wanted to give a small explanation for like where I'm at right now. But this week at Bungie actually gives us quite a few things to actually talk about. One of the largest, of course, is the Year 2 reveal. And one of the largest things to kind of take from this is, well, it's just keeping up with that final cutscene from Destiny 2, actually. We saw, of course, everything kind of hit in kind of the way it needed to. We had Callus's ship get hit, we had all these other pieces with Mars, and now we've got the Reef. It was actually kind of hard, at least for me, to see on the phone when they had actually dropped this while I was at work, but looking at this and seeing the image, of course, full blown, you can definitely tell that this is more the Reef. Though what I find a little worrying is the fact that said Reef is also in a full-blown circle, and it's giving me some massive Halo vibes, and I don't know if I like that. Also, somebody ended up saying that they see Mara Sov in the middle here, and she's like doing a dab at us and whatnot. I don't know, tricks with the eyes, probably not artist intent. It definitely wasn't artist intent, let's be honest here. Additionally, I find it weird that the lettering is the way that it is, and I had a little spin foil that was going on with this, that maybe there was a hidden message in the words. You'll notice, especially with the Year 2 reveal portion of the image, the letters don't exactly match up, and I'm trying to figure out if there's any meaning behind that. There probably isn't. Of course, I'm just speculating. Of course, I'm letting my mind wander here a little bit, but this one, I don't know. This one feels a little bit more intended to me. I can't find anything that seems to say that there is a hidden message within these words or within this broken messaging or wording, but I just wanted to point it out at the very least. But I'm harping on this image a little bit too long. June 5th at 9 a.m. Pacific over on twitch.tv/Bungie, we do, of course, get the reveal for more of what's to come in Year 2. And I'm definitely excited for this. Except for the fact that when we go further into this TWAB, there are a couple of things that I'm kind of questioning where guidance is still going right now, and especially when it comes to gameplay elements. They also hint that this is something that's going to be going on all summer long, so I have a feeling we'll see some more stuff over at E3. We might even see some stuff that kind of pops up from other reveals and events. We've got the PlayStation experience that's going to be going on, and I think there's a couple other conventions that are happening between E3 to September that will end up showcasing a little bit more, or at least give them more possibility to showcase more, I should say. But let's get into the nitty-gritty of why we're here when we start talking about this week at Bungie. Because, my goodness, Bungie, let's actually talk about this for a second. 95% of this sounds awesome, until, of course, we end up playing it. We'll have to see how this sounds like and the actual feels like carries into play. But the 5%, like 95% of this I love. The 5% that I have problems with, unfortunately, is a pretty big 5%. Let's talk about this for a second, because it comes down to catalysts. I kind of want to get this discussion out of the way now, just to get it on board that I do, of course, like faction rallies as a whole, and like where they're going with it. So again, I want to get this discussion out of the way now. The gist is that they're taking 3 exotic catalysts and breaking them down amongst the 3 factions. So, Graviton Lance gets to Dead Orbit, Sunshot goes to Future War Cult, and Sweet Business goes to New Monarchy. There are are also a couple of other things that are kind of segued into the factions otherwise, like Dead Orbit also getting a skin or an ornament for the exotic Eye of Another World for Warlocks, the Crest of Alpha Lupi getting an upgraded look for New Monarchy for Titans, and the Knucklehead Radar for Hunters going to Future War Cults. All of these things kind of play back to the way that the faction feels, and as much as I know some people are going to really be like, grr, arg, I don't like this idea of the ornaments being stuck behind the factions, that is the least of my concerns, because it goes back to the idea that we've screamed about for a while now, which is dedication to these factions. I've always said it, but even back through Destiny 1, that it didn't feel like there was a reason for me to stay dedicated to a faction, except for if the weapon looked good for that role that week or otherwise, but it was something that you could easily flip-flop back and forth with. Here, they're trying to make it so that you are more dedicated to actually going for that faction. And it works in some ways, but the Catalyst idea is the biggest problem. The reason that I have issue with Catalyst, and I was thinking about this for a good while before I ended up wanting to comment on this and wanting to make this video, but it's the idea that you are taking a gameplay element and shoehorning it into a faction-specific idea. And though, yes, you can change these monthly, I should mention that now before we get into the conversation fully, you can change your faction allegiance monthly or evently, I guess is the more proper term, but we're going to be seeing this 3 times. So if you grind it out hard enough, all 3 of these catalysts can be obtained by going to those respected factions. But it forces you to roll to those factions no matter what, and you may end up missing out on some weapons that you wanted to get a hold of that may or may not be introduced that week. And that's only part 1 of the issue. Part 2, of course, comes to the fact that weapon catalysts are also increasing the ability for you to actually be competitive while using that weapon. And though they might be shorter things or smaller things that really affect the weapon in a lot of cases with catalysts, it's still a big piece and it's still a big marker to keep in mind. It's a gameplay element. Point-based gameplay element. And objectively, that is one of the biggest issues by sticking them behind the factions. In another way, I see where they're going with it. I understand that they want to create this idea of dedication to the faction, and I do appreciate what they're trying to do. But overall things where every weapon can be obtained by everybody, and again, with the ornaments aside, I guess, even though I understand why people would be a little miffed about it, it's just this idea that you're sticking gameplay elements behind these factions. And also, before I forget about it, congratulations to Dead Orbit on your first win for faction rallies, because it's probably going to be a landslide for you again over Season 3. Because again, Graviton Lance is going over to Dead Orbit. And I just don't see that the other 2 exotics are on equal level. They're good, they're still fun, I'm not saying they're not, but again, this should be a conversation I have to have. So how can we fix this? That's actually kind of simple, to be realistic and honest. It seems like the maximum is rank 30 when going after a lot of these options and weapons, gear, etc. But in that respect, what they could do is, while Faction Rally is available, they could allow these catalysts to drop from any time you turn in for an engram. And then maybe, on random chance, you get a hold of the catalyst that is available from even one of the other faction representatives. And at that point, it at least pushes you to go through the faction that you're with, and not dropping the potential for actually getting a hold of these catalysts in other methods. Additionally, they could also do this pretty simply, just allow for it to rotate every time the event comes back. So again, for instance, Graviton Lance is on Dead Orbit this time. Next time, maybe it shifts over to Future War Cult. That way, anybody that wants to actually pledge for Future War Cult, actually, because I would like to, and not get shoehorned into picking up Graviton Lance, because it's still one of my favorite exotics, even from the first day that it was released on Destiny 2. I'm rambling. The idea of just changing it over from place to place would make things much easier to stomach with the way that you're going to put catalysts behind this system. Also, in terms of the ornaments themselves, again, I'm really not finding them to be that big of a deal because it's very specific exotics and it's very specific classes. Additionally, if you're going to add a system like this, then I would almost say just take Eye of the Other World and we'll keep on the Dead Orbit train, but keep one of them for Dead Orbit, another for Future War Cult, and another for New Monarchy. This way you can show those colors off, and even if you change your faction allegiance every time that it's available, having all 3 ornaments wouldn't be that big a deal. It just shows you're a dedicated player, and that's kind of a good thing. But additionally, it still shows dedication to the faction that you're looking for, and again, this is why I don't necessarily berate Bungie for this one, but the Catalyst thing just kills me. Anyway, I'm harping on the Catalyst idea pretty hard, but it does need to be talked about and mentioned, and I don't know what you're doing, Bungie, but you have to sit and think if it's going to be a game-breaking idea. Probably don't dial it into like one specific element of an element that only shows up now and again. But again, simple fixes, we could see. It might be something that we're just blowing up out of proportion, and they will go ahead and rotate them. Except we're not blowing it up out of proportion, Bungie. Please fix, please fix. But 2 things here. How do rankings work? Well, ranks themselves are actually going to be carried over from event to event. So let's say, for instance, you only get to rank 10. You get a third of the way through, you're kind of like me, you don't have a lot of time to play anymore for the game, and what you actually get, of course, is only a third of what's available through the Faction Rally events. Well, that's okay, because your actual progress through your ranking will carry over from event to event. It kind of works similarly with Iron Banner this time around, where it does carry over into the next event. Additionally, it sounds like they're making it a bit easier, maybe a bit harder, I don't know necessarily, because we have to see how this system works, to grab a hold of a lot of these tokens. And this comes down to the Renown system. So the Renown system will actually showcase who you're pledged for out and about in the world, which I kind of think is pretty cool because it gives this idea of like, well, I don't really want him getting better than me outside of this event that I'm doing, this strike or otherwise. And to me, that's pretty neat. Additionally, though, it does give you more benefits by staying alive, basically. As soon as you die, your renown actually drops off of you, and this is even counting with patrols, public events, and high-value targets. So you have to be mindful of how you're playing. Basically, the more skilled player is rewarded with higher rewards, but again, we'll have to see how the system definitely plays out. Lost sectors also give more available loot as well as also additional tokens. So at least these are the things that they're kind of talking about for us a little bit here. To break it down, how does Renown kind of work out? I'll just read this verbatim because I think it does a pretty good job of explaining it, but Renown increases the level of challenging gameplay. Health generation is vastly reduced, all stack levels. Enemy kills have a chance to drop health orbs, all stack levels. Player damage decreased, scales with stack up to 5. Incoming damage increased, scales with stack up to 5. So, all this is doing is basically making every activity you do into a complete nightfall, which is probably going to make some people really mad, and it's going to make some other people really happy, because they're going to have challenge even out and about in the typical world. But that's legitimately the idea that I'm seeing through faction rallies. Again, this is why I like the idea of what is being showcased with them. They're still bringing back the weapons that will change, of course, every time the event is active during the season, and I do like that. But the idea of Catalyst is objectively flawed. Just keeping that behind that system is not a good idea. Again, I think if you stuck it behind the 2 systems I'm talking about, either rotating which catalyst goes where, or allowing those catalysts to be grabbed through legendary engrams for turn-ins for tokens, it would fix it immediately. I don't see it being a problem at all. Just the means that you could sign up with that faction and guaranteed get a hold of that actual catalyst wouldn't be a bad thing. That's where I'm kind of at right now. Again, forgive my voice, I know I'm cracking here a little bit, but allergies suck. There are a few other things that they talked about with Crucible Labs, and I've been seeing some very mixed reactions to this. I think I need to just kind of state my opinion on this, though, and say, don't berate the idea of Crucible Labs. can you berate the actual game mode that they're testing, please? Because the idea of Crucible Labs is exactly what you've been screaming for a very, very, very long time now. The idea to actually have upcoming content and ideas presented to you so that you can give input is the exact idea of what Crucible Labs is about. And this whole concept of Showdown, as they are kind of calling it here at this point, that's something that's going to change from week to week, or at least semi-weekly, until they really get the system involved. However, what I really do feel that they would benefit from is a lot more sandbox testing. If they could somehow derive this system, take it away from the overall sandbox that we have now, and stick it into its own little world, that would allow for some testing and actual feedback from us as the community to say, no, we don't like the changes that you made to Graviton Lance, instead of you just going ahead and doing them. And at that point, I think that's where you can actually find yourself getting better balanced ideas, especially when all is said and done, we're the guys that are kind of using those weapons on the typical. But again, that's just my 2 cents, and I do understand, again, that Crucible Labs is still developing. And right now, this is just an idea to kind of change over and kind of test and play with. So keep it in mind, if you are playing with Crucible Labs, it is just for testing. Give feedback because they're looking for it. And if there is an actual game mode that gets tested that you like, talk about it. Talk it up. Don't just be silent on it, because that is how things don't get changed. The only reason that we have things get changed right now is because we're just complaining about it. But if you want a mode in, talk about it too. It's just as important. Also, as most of you know, I'm not really a Crucible player all that much anymore, so I'm not going to comment on actually how the game mode is, so I'm moving on. The last thing just to cover real quick before we get to the actual finale here, we need to kind of look over the ideas of escalation protocol. The long story short on this one, frankly, is that the difficulty is coming down. I kind of said in my Discord, and I mean this completely jokingly, but I find it funny that reading this entire paragraph, if you guys decide to, basically just screams, "We're sorry we listened too much to Dado when he was out over at the community summit. Sorry, oops." Obviously, I was joking. I appreciated the higher difficulty, but we're just finding with the idea of getting actual fire teams in play, it's a little tough. Lastly, and the thing that you're probably tuning into here soon, and you're going to actually find out, is that the Warmind Issue 2 is coming out today, or it's already released depending on when I got this video out to you. Long story short, I think you guys know what the next big topic is going to be, because, my goodness. But again, I've got one more video that I do want to voice before you actually get a chance to hear about Warmind's comic, and that comes down to Ares 1 and the crew. We've been back and forth on this topic for a little while now, and I made it a big point to actually talk about it over on the community's post, to can just kind of highlight those a little bit more. But this has definitely caused a lot of confusion for many that are out there to try and interpret what's actually going on with these cards, and I'm anxious to get a chance to talk about it. Anyway, before I really dig into that and start talking about that topic a little bit, I just wanted to at least highlight that Warmind Issue 2 is coming up, and those are my plans coming up next. Again, don't forget to check out the TWAB or This Week at Bungie for yourself, because there are plenty of other things that are going on overall. I just wanted to highlight a few things that I really wanted to kind of talk about and at least bring them up to your overall interpretation. Don't worry, this isn't going to be a weekly thing, but in terms of those catalysts and how Bungie is kind of treating them, especially with faction rallies and keeping them limited like that, I really just wanted to talk about that because that's a big deal. I feel like it's 2 steps forward, and again, it's 1 step backward, just in terms of implementation. But implementation can be fixed, and that's the thing that I just want to stress. And it's again the reason I do videos like these, because I feel that if I don't talk about this kind of stuff in the way that I feel and I hear from my community, I do you all a disservice in case somebody at Bungie does happen to be listening. So, that's the idea and why I'm doing this now. As unscripted as it is, because if you couldn't tell, I didn't have anything written for this. I'm still kind of uncomfortable with doing it that way, I'll be honest. Anyway, I'm rambling at this point, so I'm gonna shut up. You guys have a fantastic rest of your day, and to Guardians and non-Guardians alike, I'll see you next space time. Take care.